Welcome back, everyone, to another session. Today I'm excited because we get to dive deep into the world of comics as we get to talk to a comic book writer himself, Craig Sawyer. This episode is really great. I do apologize for the viewers out there that are watching this. Near the end of the video, the audio sync is a little off, but the conversation is still great and everything is still intact audio-wise. Just a little off on our video. But thank you for tuning in and enjoy. Welcome to IPA Sessions. Welcome to IPA Sessions, a podcast for independent artists. As always, I'm your host, Kay Jacob, and this is a place where I like to try and provide inspirations for practical applications in entertainment. And today, I finally got on someone I've been talking to behind the scenes for a long time. We've been working really hard at trying to make this podcast work, get him in for this episode, because I'm super excited to talk comic books today. But on top of everything else, this man does everything. We call him an Imagineer, but he's an author, a novelist, a board game creator, and many, many other things when it comes to the world of writing and prose. So please welcome today, Craig Sawyer. Welcome to the show, man. Say hi.
Finally, we got
We did it.
here together. We're here together virtually, but yeah, long time in the working, man. I'm glad we can make it happen.
I know, and I got to give a shout out to a friend of the show that came on in my very first season, AJ Dana. He helped introduce us, got us connected. So thank you, AJ. I really appreciate this.
Ed, lover of old school monster movies and horror. Like, yeah, AJ's the real deal. Like he's a
AJ is the real deal. Yep. Well, man, let's jump into this. So, what all do you do? Who are you, Craig?
I wear many masks, my friend. So, originally small town guy, moved in Tennessee, moved to Nashville to pursue acting, actually. I did a lot of acting, independent films there and commercials. I worked at a Shakespearean rep company for a while. Acting is what I was really focused on for many, many years, but I was always creating stories as far back, reading comic books and loving
Yeah.
monsters, my whole life. But in my spare time, I would write because being an actor, you're waiting on the phone to ring, and I did a lot of stuff in acting. But it's just the business of acting. I got started a little bit later. Most people start as a kid, and I moved to LA, and I did that too here for a while. But I kept finding myself the storytelling part of it. I loved, and during COVID, I started writing more hardcore, and I wrote a novel while everybody was stuck in the house, and I started like writing comic books, my own comics, and then I published them through Kickstarter, and then eventually people started hiring me to write their comic books. And so me and some friends made a board game before COVID, and it's just anything that I can get my creative juices flowing. I'm into. I try to do
Right.
everything growing up. I want to make. I want to live my life making those things, and then giving that love back to other people and fans. I love comics. I want to do the same thing for people. I love Dungeons and Dragons growing up and board games, and I now want to give that back to people. And now they're playing my board game, which is super rad.
So yeah, let's talk about the comics real quick. You're here to talk about comic book world, but we're going to cover everything that you do, but specifically the focus is about the comics. And I want to talk about the comics real quick. You have written a comic called Forbidden Museum, which I absolutely love, and you have another one out called Mars City Vice. These comics are great. They're two extremely different comics, but they're both amazing sci-fi. One focuses on the aspects of the universal monster style world, and the other is straight up your alien sci-fi stuff, but with basically Miami Vice in space. And I absolutely love it. Can you tell us a little bit about these two comics?
Sure. So Forbidden Museum was born of my love of Indiana Jones and like a mishmash of like OG Universal monsters. And I was so excited, that I thought Universal was going to form this dark universe again and have the Wolfman, because the old Universal movies with the Mummy, Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon, that was the first shared universe. Like you'd have
Yeah.
Wolfman And it's kind of what Marvel ended up doing later. It's this shared universe, not quite as complex, but yeah, they were already doing that. And then I thought they were going to bring it back, and then they kind of dropped the ball on that. And I'm like, you know what? I think I could do the story better. I think I got a better idea in my mind. So I kind of took Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker, Van Helsing, all the guys that went after Dracula in the original novel.
Yes.
Because
Mhm.
the original monsters from the novel aren't copywritten. As long as you don't make it look like a Universal, the way they did Universal monsters. These are all
Yeah.
public. So, so I had those characters instead of when they defeated Dracula, but then they were like, what do we do with him? We've trapped him in his coffin, and we've used the Book of the Dead as like this book of magic that Harker used to imprison Dracula in his own tomb, so he can't get back out. So he said, what do we do with him? So they built a forbidden museum. They built this underground vault to lock up the monsters and keep them away from the world. And there was not only Dracula as a great evil in the world, there was the Mummy King, like a cursed pharaoh. There was uh,
The creature.
the creature, the Gill God is what I call him. He's worshipped in the Amazon as his god,
Mhm.
and wolf beast. And the wolf
Yeah.
beast is like uh, this creature that's cursed, this cursed belt you put on it, and it melds with your body, and you turn to a cursed creature every full moon. So all
Yeah,
these
and
things,
I wanna say all of
yeah.
them are fantastic nods and beautifully illustrated, to, nods and illustrations to the Universal
And
monsters.
yet Archie has this kind of like throwback, kind of heavy ink art, kind of Bernie Wrightson kind of vibe, old G art, and it was perfect for this. So Luke Archie, I give a shout out, awesome. James G. Brown did the colors. He's done GI Joe. He's working now with Eric July doing
That's cool.
right now doing that stuff. And so I set out to like get big people in the industry because I wanted the book to look really good, you know. And so anyway, so Jonathan Harker traps Dracula, goes and captures these other monsters from around the globe, and flash forward to his great great grandson, who's like a podcaster, adventurer, and he thinks he's going to find his grandfather's antiques and riches, but what he doesn't realize, he breaks the seal of the Egyptian vault, and all these monsters now are released, and his partner betrays him, locks him in a coffin, and takes all these things to sell. And there's another reason. The Invisible Man plays into this too. He's trying to collect all these things. He's the big baddie
Love it.
in it. So he's trying to do all this, and like, anyways, so the museum has a cursed curator that if you're the one that defiles it and opens it, this this scarab attaches to your chest, and it starts slowly rotting you and turning you into a mummy. But you've got a certain time limit to go out and find all these things and put them back in the museum, or you're cursed yourself. And so, but it also gives him some powers too, as
Nice.
you discover as you go through. So it's a little superhero, a little monster, a little Indiana Jones, a little world.
Yeah.
Every issue you're hunting a new monster kind of deal, and eventually it's going to culminate to a huge monster battle. Which,
I love it. And I really like too how the comic book opens up because you're really getting your story is the ending of what could have been a six arc, story with just Jonathan Harker himself, but instead it's all in 6 pages. And then it opens up so into this brand new story following the next generation in a modern setting or, close to modern setting.
yeah.
And it's beautifully done. So I absolutely love that. And we're going to come back to talk about that as well as this next one, which is Mars City Vice. Tell us a little bit about that comic book.
So I love Miami Vice. This is definitely a satirical nod, ode to Miami Vice, obviously. And I
It's
also
so
like
well done.
the Matrix and Total Recall. And I thought, well, it'd be rad in the future if Mars has become an amusement park designed to look like 80s Miami. But the seagulls are robots, androids, and like it's fake, but you have aliens coming here and everybody coming here, and actors play roles in this. So it's like you're going to like a Disneyland amusement park of the 80s Miami with criminals and all this. But they're using this setting, this underground gangsters, space gangsters, to sell drugs. And so our lead guy, so it's a human that was a policeman on the moon gets too close to discovering corruption, so they send him to Mars as a punishment to be a fake cop, but kind of be.
Mhm.
And then there's this alien cat guy who's on the hunt for his sister, who's been abducted by this and by this alien gangster, and they kind of end up teaming up together.
One
So,
thing I like too what
but
I'm sorry to cut you off. Just one thing I really like too is the fact that it's called Mars City Vice. Mars City is this giant interactive theme park on
yeah,
Mars that is 1980s Miami.
yeah,
And it's just full of aliens and humans and this whole cool world of stories. And like you said, the whole fake cop part coming into it. So I really like all the way you set that world up where it's like, wait a minute, how is he doing a 1980s Miami? And it's like, oh, because it's a theme park and that's why there's aliens in it all of a sudden. And everyone has the look and the touristy stuff. I thought it was great.
it's also comical because the lead character like has to use a car phone, and he's like
Yeah. They
he,
use out of date technology too. I think that's great.
he's clothes, and all this other stuff. So yeah, and I thought '80s Miami kind of looks like with the neon. It kind of looks like a futuristic city at the
It
time. I
does.
don't.
It has that vibe, that neo futuristic look.
Yeah, so I thought that's a perfect thing to put it on. Let's put it on Mars and like do this whole thing with aliens and stuff. So
And
yeah,
did you work with the same illustrator for that comic strip as well as I'm sorry, for that comic book as well as, you did for Forbidden Museum, or is it a different guy?
by a guy from Brazil named David.
Bring it up a little close for me.
That's a variant cover,
Got you.
and so yeah, that's another cover.
It looks great.
Yeah, yeah. So Natho Diaz did this cover for me, and right now he's currently doing Daredevil for Marvel.
I was about to say it has a really cool I was gonna say it reminds me of the Max Comics when they did, the Punisher series, back
Yeah.
in the day. It has a
So he's
really
the,
good
and I said
illustration.
it's funny. Everybody that I chose to do my comics now, all of a sudden have blown up, and they're like working for Marvel and DC now, like just in the past couple of months.
That's
So
fantastic.
I know how to pick them, man. I know how to pick them.
Yeah, yeah. And shout out to those amazing artists. Check out their other works too. That's awesome.
And this is, I don't know if you know an old artist, Sterenko, who did the Nick Fury covers. He did the real back in the
Oh,
'70s,
wow.
real
Yeah.
Fury covers. Well, this is an ode to one of his covers.
That's
This is very,
awesome.
so.
No, I love it, man. And you have this huge overactive imagination, and it's working wonders for you. Uh, this kind of leads me to want to talk a little bit about some of your other projects. As we stated, you're a board game creator, and you've made this hybrid of a board game meets RPG, kind of like a sort of D&D style to it with the board game and the pieces. And this one is called Secret Unknown Stuff Escape from Dolce. Take me a little bit through this whole world of this board game and how you went about deciding to do this. Because I mean, you've already established these comic books, so why make board games?
So I had my other place. I live in LA now. I used to live in another place, and these neighbors moved in from Philly, and they work for a huge toy company out here. And we love comic books and toys and old stuff and pop culture stuff. And we used to hang out and have a beer. And then I'm constantly still coming up with ideas. And one day we got back into board games. So we started playing Mansions of Madness, and what else we got? What other modern board games? Because we hadn't played board games. We started playing this board game. And I'm like, you know what? I think we could come up with a board game. And I was like, wait a minute. You do package design, one of my friends. You do shipping with China. You deal with that through your company. You're a graphic designer of toy packaging. I'm a writer. We can make a board game. We got the perfect team. And they
Smart.
stopped, and they weren't too happy with their current situation, their jobs. So they quit their jobs, sold their house back east, and we all went to work full time making Escape from Dulce. And we kickstarted 4 years ago. We kickstarted the first run, and to date we've sold over 1,000 games. The Kickstarter I think landed right at like $60,000
That's
back in the day.
amazing.
And
Good
our
job.
game, a crazy game at the time, because I said we have to stand out somehow. So you're misfits trapped in the bottom of an alien controlled military base in Dulce, New Mexico. And you can play
Nice.
a two-headed psychic cow with machine gun strapped to its back. You can play as a You can play as a Tori Hanzo, a samurai abducted in feudal Japan. You're all waking up from these cryotubes. You can play as a conjoined Cthulhu type family that looks like Bob Dobbs in the 50s family, perfect family, or an alien who smokes stogie cigars. And, anyways, you're all working together with your character sheets, leveling up like Dungeons and Dragons, finding items, fighting enemies, and you're going up this 3D board to the surface to escape.
That's
And,
cool.
and so we did some modules. Uh, we're going to do a second printing, hopefully end of this year or next year, and we're going to do a series of prequel stories for each character. We're going to release in prose format and anthology, and like a secret unknown stuff anthology, because we're building this world up. And I've written a pilot for a television series for this, and like we've been approached by a few people that the deals were not so good, and we've actually passed on some production deals, waiting for the right deal.
Yeah, it's you guys' project. You know what you want, and I say, yeah, you have the controller. But that's a great man. That's awesome that you're even getting it out that far. That's incredible. And so, as we stated, you've done comic books. You have this board game out now, and of course, to everyone listening, there are links in the show notes. Do yourself a favor, click on them, check them out, see if this is something that interests you, and help support an indie artist. And I am going to have you back on to talk about these many other works, but I just want to kind of give everyone a little introduction of who you are. And we're not done. You also have a book that just came out. Well, I say just came out, but it was released in October of 2023, and it's called Clayboy. So now you've written a novel. What's up with that, man?
So I think when I was young, I had crazy imagination all over the place. Bing, 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 like a ball in a pinball game. So until I got a little bit more mature and developed discipline, kids, you got to finish what you start. You got to finish what you start. Otherwise, you have no product. You have nothing to show. So finally, when I gained discipline and maturity later, I could focus my imagination better. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do everything I wanted. I'm going to make comic books. And the internet's made this possible too. Kickstarter's made things possible.
Yeah.
And like we have all these things, the internet can be a force of good or evil,
Very true.
as you know. But, anyways, I'm a big horror fan. Horror is my genre. I love sci-fi. I love westerns. I've written them all. But Clayboy. So Clayboy was a novel I got published through a company called Brigand's Gate Press. You can get it at a lot of Barnes and Nobles or pre-order Barnes and Nobles on Amazon.
That's
And
awesome.
it's a story about a bullied middle schooler named Caleb who works with clay for therapy because his mother got brutally killed by a serial killer, as they do in horror novels. And he goes with a religious aunt and uncle. His uncle's kind of a pseudo fire and brimstone cult leader from the South. But Caleb doesn't realize it though, but he's like a latent omnikinetic, like a powerful telekinetic. And he discovers a video online how to make a tulpa. Now, what do you
Yeah.
is a Eastern mysticism theory of somebody can focus so greatly on an imaginary being that you can actually give it life, like it actually becomes sentient and starts to think for itself.
It sounds very similar also to the Judaism golems.
Yeah, it's definitely a Gollum story mixed in there. It's breathing life. The clay, Adam was, and Eve were made. Adam was made from clay. There's goes
Yeah.
back. I love the myths, old myths. There's nothing
Yeah.
new. Take the old myths and kind of pull them up, make them modern. But little as you know, it would take a master to make a tulpa meditating for years, but he's got these powers he doesn't know. So when he starts talking to this thing and feeding this thing, it gets real faster and it starts protecting him from his bullies. It becomes like his best friend.
Oh,
And he names it Grin after Grendel, his favorite story, Beowulf. But he also
smart. I like that.
that Grendel was the victim because they killed Grendel's mother. Caleb's mother got killed. So it's basically what really was the heart of this. I think all good art has like a center. You don't have to preach to people. But the Columbine shootings was always in the back of my mind a little bit. And not necessarily the gun debate, but what makes someone who experiences trauma, some people grow to protect people from that same pain, but then some people want to
Inflicted.
inflict that pain.
Mhm.
And it's your dark side. So Grin is Caleb's dark
Dark
half.
side. I like this.
And then finally, Grin asks for a clay body, and he builds him a clay boy, which he possesses, and then all hell breaks loose,
All
and the
right. I
Wheelers
like
go.
that. No spoilers now because I'm actually going to be reading this very soon.
Okay,
So no spoilers. We want to save some mystery for the folks out there, but I love this synopsis here. I like the setup. That's really cool, man. And I appreciate you taking the time to tell us a little bit about all this stuff that you do. And I'm sure by the time we get you to come on and really go into some detail on the process of how you made a book, the process of how you made a board game, maybe even get some of your fellow coworkers in on it. I'm sure you'll have something brand new happening that you've worked on. Maybe you'll have a script finally for the board game and something in production.
I may
I'm
start
happy
her
to see it, man. Well, I'm
on.
happy to see everything happening for you, and I'm so excited to have you here to talk about the comic book world. And as we stated, you are a writer. You write comics. You work with illustrators, with pen. Is it called pencilers or colorists? I forget the term.
Pencilers, inkers, colorists.
Inkers. Yes. You go through that whole process. I want to really focus in on folks out there that want to write a comic.
Sure.
How to kind of get in that direction of making that happen. They have a story and they want to unfold it. How can they go about, working and finding the right people to get this done? So if you don't mind, can you just take me through your process? And I believe Forbidden Museum was your first project. So just take me through your whole process of how that happened for you. And then maybe a little bit of what was different between that process and getting Mars City taken care of.
Okay, sure. So I don't know. You know a guy named Mark Millar, right? He does. He did Kick Ass, and he did
Yeah,
Jupiter Ascending, and like lately, he's been very vocal in the comic book world about like lately, there's the comics gate thing going on, and there's other drama going on. They say comics are too woke on this side. There's very polar extremes on both sides, but the main takeaway is major mainstream comics aren't selling very well
yeah,
for whatever reason you want to take away from that. Whether it's a message you're trying to put forth too much, or it's the art's not good enough, or the writing's not good enough, or but there are some great things in there. You can look at positive and negatives. But recently, I think Mark came on board to do the defense of a comic store owner who made a video rant about how people are injecting their own personalities into comics too much and are not true to the actual character. There's valid points on both sides, but Mark Millar used to have a website called Millar World, and he would hold contests for comic book writers. And I really based the way I write a comic book script on the way Mark Millar writes a comic book script. And there's two ways they can say there's the Marvel way and there's the DC way, and like I write a script. Like some people just write a synopsis. Like they tell an artist like Spider-Man's going to come and fight the Kingpin this issue, and they're going to be in New York, and they're going to be in a warehouse, and there's going to be drug dealers, and then they just go out and the artist just writes and they fill in the dialogue later. I write like a DC right, like I write an actual script like Mark Millar.
gotcha.
So panel one, 4 panels. First panel, Spider-Man is crouched on top of the warehouse, overlooking a shadowy alleyway where 4 villains are unloading cocaine from the back of a van. Panel two, Spider-Man swings and sticks to the side wall. So comic books are another muscle, different from prose, different from other things, where you're kind of seeing like you're the director, you're the cinematographer, you're thinking in snapshots, and you're
Right.
thinking lighting and drama and how to say things with words. A good comic book page should you should be able just to look at it with no dialogue and tell what's going on.
Yeah.
And the dialogue is to fill in stuff. And I brought back uh, thought balloons in my comics because I missed the inner. It's great to think Spider-Man's like thinking like I got to get home and like Aunt May's making dinner.
Right. The inner monologues, you miss those.
Talking to so I like comic bubbles because they can kind of fill in the inner workings of a person's mind, and you can kind of get a little more prose with it. But so got the idea. Now, how are you gonna make a comic book? Like I started like everybody else. Like, what do you do exactly? Why should I
Yeah.
wait for me? Because no one's gonna hire you professionally unless you have something to show them that you've done that looks of professional caliber. So a lot of people say, I'll never work for free. Well, if you're a writer, you're gonna be working for free.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you'll be working for free. And most artists do not want to work for free. and it's very hard to tell. Like the way I approach artists, if you've worked for the top 4 or 5 companies and you have a professional portfolio, you should get paid like a professional. If you're an amateur who's never done anything, you don't deserve pro rates. Sorry, it's just that's not the way it is. But I found some very strong people that come out of the Kubrick school of cartooning, which is where Luke Archie came from, the Forbidden Museum. David Dion is from South America, around Brazil, and he sometimes it's you can find very talented people in South America where our exchange rate is better too, and sometimes you can get a better deal on an artist by going to another country, and there's hungry for work, and so I got professional people too. I got somebody coloring so important. I got James G. Brown, who's one of the best colorists in comic books. He's worked, like I said, for GI Joe, Marvel, DC. He's working for Eric
Nice.
now. I mean, these are top guys. But for those top guys, you're going to pay for them, and they deserve
Mhm,
it. Deserve
mhm.
that. So all in all, if you're going to do even an indie comic where you're cutting the fat and you're really being careful with prices and you get a good price on everything, you're still going to be spending to make one issue of a 21, 22 page comic self. If you do it yourself, it's going to be between $4 and $6,000 for an issue. You may
Whew.
get cheap, but if you don't hire quality people, your book's not going to look good, and no one's going to buy it. Nobody's going to want it. So, but that's where Kickstarter comes in. If you do a Kickstarter, which I did for the board game, so I kind of was familiar with Kickstarter. I did a Kickstarter for each of these comics, and every one of them were successful. But sometimes they hit very close, just right over what you're asking for, and then you end up putting your own money in there
Yeah.
sometimes. But so far, every Kickstarter I've done has been successful, and they kind of grow as you do them because you're growing a fan base too as well. And I love superheroes, but there's so many superhero books out there. I decided to do like a horror book, and I decided to do a sci-fi book. But it would be cool to do a superhero book at some point. But I was thinking like
The hard
it's all
part is creating an original superhero
well,
story, and that's so
nobody
difficult in today's world.
nobody can beat this dead horse anymore. And then like
I
it Invincible. I'm like
love
Invincible.
Invincible. Huge Invincible fan.
So he's like, yeah, you can. You can do
Mhm.
something on the comic book world and make it appealing. The cartoon is amazing, man, and like so is the book. So props to Robert Kirkman. But
Yeah.
there's no excuse if you want to make something that you can't do it. You can get on Facebook boards and look for artists. There's always people looking. A lot of people will work with you on your budget. So if you got an idea, you can make it happen if you put the
Okay.
work. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So you
So
get your crew together, you find the artists, you find the people you want, you have your Kickstarter, you got funding to start, paying out appropriately who you need.
yeah.
How do you piece this comic together and get it published? How do you go about that?
Well, so my novel was published by a publisher. My comics are self-published through my imprint called Skull Dust Press.
Mhm.
So I did the comics myself because I need, but I wanted to work in comics. So I'm like, I gotta make something to show people that I can do this. And then when I got these out, then people started hitting me up, writing their comics.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So anthology coming out from uh, recently. I'll give you the specs for it. I got an anthology coming out on Kickstarter from another company, all about octopuses. it's the
Nice. Okay.
it's kind of Cthulhu, and then I did a Bloody Mary miniseries, kind of a slasher comic. It's going to come out later this year too, from
That's
another
awesome. So
another.
you
company.
so I guess I didn't realize you have your own comic publishing company too. I should have mentioned that in the introduction. I apologize. I wasn't aware. I thought it was like someone else that you were working through. That's awesome.
A little bitty one for these, but yeah, I'd much rather just be the creative. But at first, you got to do what you got to do,
Yeah.
to get it
Well, and you're helping other people just like yourself. You're helping other artists out there. So this is definitely a
out.
great interview to have, especially for people that are listening that want to do comic books. Now they know who to talk to. And hearing what you're saying, I love this.
And through Forbidden Museum, I really lucked up when we did it. So there's an artist called Gabriel Delato. He's like one of the premier cover artists and just a great artist. But a company approached me that do my phones are okay, no. And he did a great museum issue 1 and said they want to do a series of collectible variants, 100, with assigned Gabriel Del Auto covers. And I think Gabriel Deodato is like the number one highest paid cover artist in comic books right now. So they approached and they did a he did an awesome
Okay.
mummy variant that was limited edition. And I mean, yeah,
Fantastic.
that's the Invisible Man. Actually, I'm sorry, Invisible Man. And he did one of the mummy, and so that
Okay, I
was
see
really
that
cool
one. That's
because
good. That's
that increased
awesome.
sales by about $500 on top of that. So because of those, but that was lucky. But yeah, but
Nice.
this original cover for Forbidden Museum issue 1 was done by Tom Mandrake, who has been forever. He does a lot of horror comics. Tom is
And
an
I love that
amazing
cover.
artist, and I think he teaches at the Kubrick School of Cartooning, and I think it's in New Jersey. So, yeah, but yeah, it's a process, but it's a lot of work, but it feels good when you get it done and get it out there.
All right. So you went about your Kickstarter, you got this publishing company together, and you went ahead and published this. How does one publish a comic book? How do you piece the pages together? How do you get it printed and set out there? Uh, Obviously through the help of Kickstarter getting the funds, but how do you actually what's this process
Well,
like?
I'll give you like the bare bones of it. Like you write the script, you get the script pages to find an artist, get the script pages to your artist, have him draw, and you need maybe 4 or 5. You need some examples of the artwork to put on the Kickstarter to show people what they're going to get. Uh, you get the artist to draw it, then you hire. Sometimes the artist will do the inks and the pencils. Sometimes you get the same guy for both, but then you got to get them colored if you're going to do a color book, and you got to get it lettered. You got to get a letterer, and a letterer will make or break a book. Ed Dukeshire did my lettering, and he's awesome. He's one of the top. I think he just got an award for lettering a couple of years ago. So everything's got to be done. You got to get good people for everything. You can't cut corners at anything if you want it to look good, and have a vision for the way you want your book to look. If it's moody and atmospheric for a horror book, or it's crisp and modern looking for like Mars City Vice, futuristic kind of vibe looking, and then you kind of out and look for an artist, just like you cast an actor for a particular
Yeah.
role. I think you cast an artist for a particular book, and then you get a
Okay.
Dropbox. You need a Dropbox or a huge file holder, and you load all these pages up, and then you find a printer. I use Kablam printing to print my books, and you can find the books on Indie Planet. That's their sales page for Kablam printing. It's called indieplanet.com, and they're all, you can get a print copy of that
Okay.
from them if you want a physical
Nice.
copy of either of my comics. And they're also on Amazon too, in digital form. If you just want to download the Kindle for each of them.
Yeah, and those are the copies I have other than the special,
Cool, yeah, absolutely. And
printed
then
one
it
that you sent
takes
me, which was awesome, thank
time
you.
to make comics, so it takes a couple of months to get all this artwork done, and then you get them printed up, and then you fulfill your Kickstarter order, and that's you're rocking and rolling. Got
That's awesome. Now was the experience with Mars City, now that you'd already been through the steps, with Forbidden Museum, was the experience any different for Mars City? Did you feel a little bit more like, "All right, now I can really get this going," when you started tackling Mars City, or was it a very similar process for that as
it
well?
all depends on the artist you're dealing with. Some artists draw really fast, and like the guy on Marty City Vice could do 2 pages or a page a day. That's hustling. And then where like the
Wow.
Forbidden Museum, Luke is a great artist, but I think he's more detailed in a lot of inks and stuff. Just a different style. It took him maybe a week to do a page. And some people are doing side jobs too. They're not doing art full time sometimes, too, as well. And so
Yeah, of course.
you're dealing with some people maybe with the English is not their first language, like in Mars City Vice. And I remember distinctly, I told him this guy has a mullet, and he's like, a fish? No, no, like a mullet. And it's good to send photos of stuff. So I made an '80s Bible of stuff that I sent this guy, because
That's
first of all, he's
amazing.
younger. So some people don't get the '80s if they didn't grow up in the '80s. I was my preteens in the '80s, and
Yeah.
yeah, you just got to like you make a book, you make it easy, but that's part of the fun. make do references. I draw some, so I can sketch out a page layout if it's complicated and I want it want a certain way, or a character if I want him to look a certain way. I can draw. I'm competent enough drawing. I can draw a picture and say this is what I want him to look like, and they're like, oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we talk about financial gains when you're an independent artist, and is it beneficial for you? So I want to ask you, as a comic book author and having your two comics out, have you, with the amount of money and the Kickstarter and everything that you've put into this, do you see financial gains coming your way? Is it something that has already happened for you, or do you feel like over time this will benefit you?
Yeah, I mean, you can't if you can break even and do what you love for a while, that's good. And then for some reason, some things just hit the cultural zeitgeist. Like some things are just instantly popular. You don't know why. I feel like sometimes, like lately, people's been
Yeah.
discovering more Mars City Vice. They're like, "Whoa, what is this?"
It's a unique niche. I love it, but that's my taste.
I
So,
pursue down in like a sci-fi world, and I can do anything. It's a fake world, so it's kind of funny. I can do '80s nostalgia too. So it's starting to pick up, and you're dealing with too, like you get advertising too. Like if you're with a big company, they can put all these advertising dollars into your book, where now you got to do all that. So you're wearing many, many hats. As in, you're the marketer, you're the producer,
yeah,
you're the editor, you're the writer, and so far I've been able to break even and make a little because I'm constantly making some money because they're always for sale. But you
yeah.
don't expect to make a profit until maybe you're 3 or 4 or 5 issues into something because it takes, you know,
And I was gonna say, I think the best analogy, or the best way to for anyone listening that's not quite sure what you mean by, like, you're in charge of everything, is you're the next Robert. You know? He was the writer and creator behind The Walking Dead, he was the writer and creator behind Invincible, many other comics, and he went around the same route that you did. He started off independently and was able to find something successful, and has 2, not just 2 very different stories with his comics, but they're also 2 very
yeah,
different art styles. One is in black and white only, and that has like incredible inkers, and they're not quite
it
colorists,
was
but
smart.
what they do with it is beautiful in the Walking Dead comics. And then of course you have Invincible, which if you've watched the TV show, I kid you not, the comics look exactly like the show. They are vibrant and beautiful and very superhero, like come out at you, pop out at you, yet being this unique story. And so that's what I think, you were implying, is like you're in charge of all that. You're the one that has to put
And
all
then
that together.
you're
And that's
packaging
a
them up,
huge
putting
bill.
comics in envelopes, you're putting the stamp, mailing them off.
Yep.
You got
You're doing the boring business work
months
too on the
later.
side, the
You're like,
paperwork
I didn't get my
process.
comics. You're just telling me this 6 months later? Like, okay, I'll mail you one. But
Yeah.
you're all these things. But luckily, no one's asked for their money. Everybody's been pretty happy with what I've done so far, So there's been no like, this sucks. I should never. Usually people are asking, when are you coming out with the next one? So that's good.
That's me. I've been bugging you all day about that. But that's because 'cause I've become a fan. I've really enjoyed both issues. I've really enjoyed, Forbidden Museum. I like where the stories go, and, you left me on a cliffhanger at the end of the second comic, and then the same thing with Mars City. I was left on another cliffhanger. Like, you're really good about each book that comes out. You set the story, you get us involved, and then you leave us hanging, and it's just like that classic, comic book where it's like, "I want the next issue. Like, I gotta know how this goes down." So you're really good at capturing that imagination and captivating the audience. I love that, man. Bravo to you. Great work. And again, I'm biased. I have become a big fan. I really enjoy what I'm reading, and you hit that particular niche that I really enjoy in my comics, in my movies, in the books that I choose to read. So like, I am a unique breed. I'm a horror fan, just like everyone else. Got my Night of the Creeps on. So like, I'm there with you. But I also feel like these comics translate well to others who may just be looking for something different than superheroes, and they're just wanting something different than the top billing that's out in the DC and Marvel universe, because they're the top dogs of comics. But you have other people. Like, I tend to really read a lot of Vertigo and Dynamite comics. For anyone listening, Dynamite's really great at taking books that you like and converting them into comics, and it's like you're getting literally word for word what you get from the book, but instead of,
Sure.
reading 3 pages of descriptions, it's all in one box. It's all visual, and it's beautifully done. They do a great job with Game of Thrones. They do a great job with some, westerns that I've seen. Um, and that's what I'm saying, like, you are on your way having this unique style, and you have a unique, what's the word I'm looking for your publishing, for what you're doing. It's
Sure.
very unique, and it's your brand. It's a brand. You're creating a brand, and it's obviously doing well because you said, with this small publishing company that you started, you have other people now, other artists reaching out to you and helping them along the way. So I think that's wonderful, dude. That's awesome.
If you walk into a room, I guess when I was young, you walk and say, "I want to be the best." Okay, maybe you are, but then people are going to be
Right.
behind your back and like, he's stuck up, or he's or you're going to breed jealousy, or you're going to breed contempt, or whatever. You're full of it. But if you walk into a room and you say, "I want to help everybody else be the best," then just by osmosis, it's gonna lift your ship too, and you're gonna make in every business you
Right.
need allies. You need people who are loyal to you. You got to treat people with respect, because this is a team that you may not work with for 6 months and say, "Can you come back and do the next issue?" Because don't come out. At least mine don't. Not
Right.
every 3 months or every 2 months. I got to recalibrate, make some more change, and then go back in and do another one. And eventually I want to make like a trade with like 5 or 6 issues in one book, where you can get the whole story in one trade paperback. Eventually, of the comics. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, get that volume. um, and speaking of allies and creating that fan base, do you get to go to Comic Cons of any kind? Do you try and promote yourself there? Is it even possible for someone of the independent comic scene to go to Comic Con?
It's expensive to go. Like with the board game, we went to 40 cons.
Oh
With
wow.
So I probably demoed the board game 1,000 times. That's equaling Comic Con, everything. There's been kind of a renaissance in the past 4 years of board games, and it's because of
I got a group I work with. And we just played, shout out. I'm sorry to take some thunder from you, but shout out to the Pirate Board company out there. We just ran through that, spent the last year playing Pirate Board, loved it. They were an independent board company like yourself, and my DM of that campaign had supported their Kickstarter, and he's like, "Check out this new thing I got," and we fell in love with it. And I'm also sending him your stuff too because I got a feeling we'll be playing something new next year.
I, yeah, no, it's like I call it a punk rock scene. It's such a creative scene where people are
Yes.
out of the corporate, because no corporation would have made my game. It's too weird. But people respond. I think big corporations are in movies now. A lot of things are scared to take chances on inventive stuff. They'd rather redo something that's made them money in the past. Do a rehash instead of coming up with create risky. But yeah,
It is risky, but you're doing something right because you have nothing to lose and you're like providing what they don't want to. And you're like, well, if you like weird stuff, come check me out. I think I got something for you. And it's working
sure.
and people are hungry for it because it is different. The simple fact that it's different, that itself shouldn't even be a risk. It's the same thing that I see in the film and TV world. I love these new weird and out there stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
look at the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Hugely successful to every audience member across the board, no matter what genre fan you are.
it still reminds.
Everyone loved that movie because it was different. And it's like you need to see people take more chances with something different, something new and original because we're hungry for it.
Vibe. Like there were such weird movies in the '80s, the late '70s and early '80s, and the one of the main reasons is corporations had bought the studios from individual owners. So studios by like one person.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Canon, what was the other one that was really good? New Horizons, all these small, production companies back in the 80s and 90s that don't exist anymore. They were all bought up. But that you still see that same thing happening now. But now what you see is these giant monstrous conglomerates like Disney buying out Fox and all these other major. And it's like, but they're not
Well, they got
taking something new and original. They're just taking the same old shit that we've all seen.
they got graphics, and they're like, it's like Coca Cola. Like, should we make something new and take a chance? It may not make a lot of money. Opening box office weekend. Let's make let's remake Roadhouse. Okay, but let's change it.
When it comes to Coca-Cola, stick with original taste Coca-Cola. Don't try anything new. Bad
Exactly.
analogy.
So, but they didn't know what to do, so they just gave a bunch
Yeah,
of new creators and said, just do whatever you want to. And you got all these weird movies like Big Trouble, Little China,
China, mhm.
and
Anything
just
Roger Corman put out, I'm a big fan
anything
of
wrong.
his.
These chances and weird movies that were great
Yep.
that now base this stuff on. So you may fall on your face if you do something new and different, but also that may be the next big thing.
Yeah, and, surprisingly, a lot of these films, a lot of board games, a lot of comics, sometimes they're out there in the world for about 10 years, and then just one day, huge cult massive hit
Yeah.
where people are like, "Oh, wait, you read that? I read that. I love that. Let's check it out again. What's up with this?" And then all of a sudden, these artists that were like, "I put that out 10 years ago, you're loving it now," and, like, it's this huge cult massive success where it's doing extremely well. And I'm gonna put this out. Invincible was one of those. It was huge in the comic world when it came out back around, I think 2010, 2012, somewhere in there. I was reading it and I remember loving it. And even at that time, Robert Kirkman was saying stuff like, I'm working on something with it. I want to try and get it out in the TV world. Don't know what we're doing yet. And then all of a sudden it's on Amazon and you can watch it. And it's really true to form. It's true to the comic and it's hugely successful. And it's bringing back people are checking out Invincible now. They're grabbing the comics. They're getting those volume collections. Like they're rereading this because it had this like cult following. Like I was a follower of Invincible for the longest time. I loved it just because it was new. And everyone's like, "Oh, well, I'm reading the new what's happening in Batman, or I'm reading what's happening in the Marvel world." And it's like, I'm just reading
Yeah.
Invincible. It's really fun. You should check it out. And he created his own. And Invincible is more than that. Like if you really get into those comics, Kirkman created a whole world. So you have, you know, side characters, side stories. You have your Avengers, like you have different stories. It's not just Invincible. You can follow Savage Dragon, you can follow all these different characters. It's great. So I'm rooting for you, man. That
That was,
hopefully for you, you don't have to wait 10 years for that overnight success. But it is an awesome feeling knowing that you've put something unique and original out there. And if it takes 10 years for people to notice, great. If it takes tomorrow, even
hey, I'm having
fucking
fun.
better.
What I wanted to.
You're having
And
fun,
that's the
yeah.
thing about like Batman and Superman, and I love them all, but we all know that Batman is never going to stop the Joker. I mean, we know that Superman is not going to kill Lex Luthor. This is going to go on and on. It's hard to surprise us with Batman and Superman. You can do some cool things, and like, how many times can we do the origin stories of these characters? And
Yeah. The what
what if
ifs.
the amazing thing about Kirkman and the new stuff is like you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know.
Mhm. That's why one of the most successful Marvel stories, in my opinion, was the Irredeemable Ant-Man, also written by Kirkman,
Yeah,
because he took a world and made it completely different while giving you exactly what you
it's like
expect,
Mark Millar
but then you're not
too
expecting
with
what happens, and it's great.
the Avengers. You know, so it's awesome.
Yep. Well, and I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited talking everything out there, but I really do appreciate your time today. I appreciate you coming on and talking about comics. And now I want to kind of jump into some questions with you. And my first one is, when it comes to the comic book world with writing these amazing comics that you've put out, what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome? And it may even be something you're still dealing with today.
I think sometimes finding the time, like balancing your time. So you got girlfriends, wives, dogs, bills, other things. When do you have time to write a novel that people aren't asking you? When do you find this quiet time to do all these things? The thing is, you got to manage your time. You got to if you got to wake up at 6 in the morning and write 3 hours before you go to work, then if you're not willing to do that, or you're willing to give up going out Friday night, or willing to do these things, then maybe this is not for you. You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
passion for wanting to create has to trump wanting to f off or be lazy. But there's things you got to do in life. You can't ignore your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. And people aren't going to understand if they're not making stuff like you make it. They're not going to understand why you go off in your head in this little world and make these things. You can't expect them to sometimes. If they do, great. But
That's why it's nice to have a very
It's nice to
supportive partner.
support a partner in anything. If you're writing, if you're being creative at all, because you have to go into your imagination a lot. And for some people, they feel like that you're ignoring them sometimes. So it's good to have a partner that's like really supportive of what you do. You know,
Right. And I agree with what you're saying. I
sure.
think time is a huge challenge for anyone, especially learning how to manage and maintain and make the time. Uh, but with your experience with everything that you've been doing creatively, you've obviously gotten comfortable. You've learned a lot from everything. But has there been something unexpected that you've had to face? Maybe it's something that you learned in the moment where you're like, "Oh,
Uh,
I didn't see this coming."
People have various interpretations of responsibility. And like sometimes you can turn into a workhorse or, like your passion and drive sometimes are not other people's passion and drive. And, and if you're working with people, you can get frustrated.
Fair.
But you've got to become the only way you're going to survive in this world and do these things is to become a communicator. If you're writing a novel, you're in a room by yourself. But if you're making a comic book, that's a collaborative endeavor. Making board games is a collaborative endeavor. And you've got to learn how to be a communicator and be patient and be empathetic with people and get and understand what makes people tick. You're never going to get these things done. You know, a lot of for these people, they're just hired guns. Some of them, some of them really live and breathe it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like your passion may be
Yeah.
somebody else's just paycheck, and you
Right. I like that. I mean, you're a team player. You may be in charge of the team, but you're also involved with the team. And so something unexpected could be different people's personalities, different work ethics, different drives and motivations, and how you communicate that with them and how you keep them on board with you as a team. Yeah. I think that's great.
work can be fun.
Um,
Well,
it can be absolutely. I mean, if you're writing a
most
comic,
of
it's
the time,
gotta be fun, right? Most of the time. So there's these facts of life that we deal with. It's the realities that are they just are. You can't change it. There's nothing that can be done about it. What's been a hard reality for you as a comic writer that you've had to deal with, overcome, or just simply accept? Like you just work with it. There's nothing that can be done about it. Can't be helped. You just have to accept that this is what's going to happen, and I have to deal with it.
breaking into the public consciousness. I always say like when you come up with a new item, you think when you get it done, it's like, oh, the angels are going to descend from the heaven, and they're like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And sometimes it can be a good project, but you don't have that huge
Mhm.
advertising budget. And soaking into the cultural zeitgeist, it's like a salesman going door to door. You pound on somebody's door and they say, go away, pound on the door, go away, pound on the door, and eventually they're going to open the door and invite you in for tea or whatever, a cold beer. But you've got to keep pounding at the door. You've got to keep doing it to the point of like, don't be annoying, but you got to go right to the precipice of being annoying with promoting your stuff if you're self promoting. You've got to really put it out there and be confident in it and keep going, keep pounding at the door. It'll eventually break through and get a fan base. But you got to keep doing it over and over and over again. You think of like Tom McFarlane's Spawn. He's been doing that 40 years,
Yeah.
and still it's good. I just did the I
Still
haven't
love it.
drawn in a while, and he's doing the Spawn airy like cover contest.
Oh, those things are cool. Yeah, he's been doing the reissues with the fan art on top of it.
Spawn and got an awesome colorist named Jesse Higgy to color it, and it turned out pretty good. There's a lot of good covers out there, man. There's a lot of amazing artists that like they're not working professionally. I mean, on the top books, and you're like, why not? Like, there's so many talented people.
Right. I like what you said too as a hard reality is breaking into the public's psyche in a way. Like you're not just reaching out to folks like me, but to other people. And I think for me, yes, when it came to Forbidden Museum, you hit on something that I like, which is classic monsters. But I look at it and I'm like, is this something I'm going to enjoy? Because you, like I said, you have that opening to your comic, which is if that was your first set, if that was your first six stories, I may not have been as excited about it because it's like, well, you kind of seen that before. So you're taking what's been done and being like, all right, put this in a box. Now, skip ahead. Here's the next generation. Oh shit, the box opened. this chaos is out there. This guy's dealing with it on top of everything else that's happening to him. And it's like, now I'm pulled in. And now it's like, okay, I love the nods. I like seeing what I already know and being given something new. I like that because there is things that like I think it's going to go a certain way and it goes completely different. I think it's going to be like this and yet it catches me off guard. I like it. I'm You don't treat me like an
Sure.
idiot, but you're giving me something refreshing at the same time. It's a little old and a little new, and I like that. So it worked for me as an audience, as a reader, and it seems like that seems to be having the same effect with others. That you're playing on that, so you found a way to do that, and that's definitely a hard reality to deal with. Is being like, well, I like it. Boy, I hope they do. you know,
You really got to do what you like. You can't sit out and say, I'm going to write a comic that I think people are going to like. You can't approach anything like that. You got to write what or create what you like.
right?
And if you somebody else like you,
Well,
what 1,000 people or 10 million people, you never, you know.
fair, totally fair, and that makes sense. And speaking of doing what you like, what has been the most valuable takeaway that you've had from this experience? And maybe it's something that's actually helped you grow and improve as
Uh,
an artist, as a writer.
just in life too, like everything I've ever done, whether it be the board game, the comic books, the book, whatever, there's always going to be naysayers that come out and say, even before you get it done, and say, this is going to be garbage. You can't add nothing to this world. I mean, I had several people say, like, you're just ripping off classic monsters. It's going to be dumb. And like, or the board game, like, there's no way you can do this. This is stupid. Or everything I've ever done. Like whether I say when I first drove to California, I did some acting. It was like, you can't survive in California. I'm in California. You can never be in a film. I've acted professionally in films. You can't write a book. That's nobody can. Like no one finishes their books. I finished a novel. You can't work in comic books. You got to go to school. I finished a comic book. And the more you persist and create, the quieter
Right?
those voices get around you. And I don't know if you're reflecting something up on somebody that they didn't try, so it's easier for them to condemn what you're doing, because if you succeed, that means, well, maybe I should have kept at it, or maybe I should have tried harder. But there's always, and when you're doing it,
Yeah.
there's a voice in your own head about halfway through that says, no, this is never going to work, this is never going to be
Right?
finished. And that comes with the process. That means you're on the right path now. When it says this is going to suck, everybody's going to hate it, I'm on the right path, because that always.
I love that your valuable takeaway is being told no, you can't do it, and it's like, oh yeah,
You've
thanks.
got
Yeah, I
got to
can
be
do this now. I'm doing something right because you said no.
sure
So what are you
no
jealous?
that no empowers you.
Yeah, I like that. The no empowers you. It's what it's that's a great takeaway. Your takeaway is
Yeah.
finding
So
that positive in the negative. I think that's awesome. We had talked about, the unexpected that comes up, but what did you actually expect from these comics? What did you want from
uh,
this?
to be able to, I don't necessarily, if I got rich, that would be great. But the thing is, I just want to work in the things I love. I want to. I think an imaginative life and creative life is a fun life for me, and as long as I can do that and not go bankrupt or go broke and be able to put food in the fridge, that'll be a success. I can just keep making stuff.
Fair.
And off like a rocket ship,
That's
great.
awesome.
If I make some people happy, even better. And if I get a lot of money and make people happy, even better. So, just as long as I can create and do the stuff I love, you know.
I think that's very genuine. Like just to be able to create, that's what you want. It's simple, it's beautiful. Keep doing it. And speaking of doing it, keeping it simple, staying honest, being creative. You had mentioned everyone has a drive, but what's your drive, man? What motivates you to do this? To do these things?
I got so many ideas in my head, and if I don't get them out of me, I feel like it may go to negative things. I don't know. It's like I always have so many ideas. Like, can I make a comic out of it? Can I write a book about it? And now that I'm kind of proficient in different mediums, I can say, well, that would make a good book. That would make a short story. That'd make a comic book. That'd make a board game. So it's a way to get this stuff out of me. So otherwise, I don't know. I think it would build up too much, or like it would affect my life in an adverse way. So it's good to have an outlet for these crazy thoughts. Maybe I'd be in a straitjacket. I don't know. You know, But yeah, so yeah, it's just a way to get these thoughts out of my head into the world. So
I like what motivates you is like, I just got to get it out. I just got to do it. It's a good motivation before you go crazy. um, you shared a lot today, man, and I really, really appreciate it. You've told us a lot of things that I think are extremely helpful for any new artist out there, any new author, writer, whether it's in the comic book world, the board game world, the author world of books and novels. But is there any specific advice that you'd like to share with anyone out there, especially, to those wanting to do what you do?
start tonight. Get a piece of paper and start writing. Start creating. Look, do some research into it. You don't you don't realize how short of a time you have on this planet. And don't be the person like, I wish I'd have done that. There's nothing in this our job market. You could get laid off tomorrow,
Yeah.
man. No one's loyal to people anymore. So would you rather regret taking a chance or regret not taking a chance? And like, because you could get laid off from a job you worked for 10 years, and you sacrificed what you love to do for something you have. Some people have to do stuff, I get it, but there's 24 hours in a day. You can find, if you really mean to want to do it, then do it. You can do it. You can do something you
Yeah.
want to do. And even if it's a stupid, you don't have to be public,
Absolutely.
just be creative. It makes you a better person. Create stuff, you know?
I like that. A lot of people, it's a theme on this show that when I get to the advice section, everyone says just do it. But I don't think I've ever had anyone say, start tonight.
Start.
I love that. Like, no, forget just doing it. Get on it. Like, I like that, man. And take advantage of your time. Do it. Yeah.
Do it right now. Get a piece of paper, start writing those ideas. Before you know it, it could just catch on and keep going and keep going and keep going. But you got to start.
Well, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time once again for just coming on today. I love picking your brain. You've got a lot to say, and I'm definitely going to have you back on, talk about your books, going to have you back on, talk about your board games. I think you got a lot of cool stuff to say, and you're clearly talented. So please, how can people find you? I know how to get a hold of you, but how can others find you? How can they follow you, support you? Where are your comics at? Where are your books at? Where are the board games at?
Sure.
How do we get a hold of you and support you?
Sure. So you can go to indieplanet.com and get physical or digital copies of all my comics. Just go to indieplanet.com and type in Forbidden Museum or Mars City Vice. You can go to Amazon and find Forbidden Museum and Mars City Vice in digital form. And you can find Playboy in print and digital on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target.com, Walmart.com.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. And of course, all the listeners out there, if you're interested in this and you want to support Greg, check out the show notes. There are links in the show notes. You'll see them there. Click on them, follow them, and support a fellow indie artist. And once again, just one more time, thank you, man. Really appreciate it. And I know people out there listening that you took away something from this conversation. I feel inspired, and I'm not even trying to write a comic, but as a writer, I really liked what he had to say. I like the way that he motivates to have that process to just start tonight. If you got an idea, get on it.
Get the pencil out, get to doing it. The only person not doing it is you. No one's stopping you.
That's right. And until you get started on it, until the next time, everyone, stay golden. Thanks for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please rate and review, like and subscribe. Every little bit helps. And as always, the theme music of the show is provided by the Ericka page. And our brand new graphic designs are all thanks to Quality Artworks. Links are in the show notes. Go support these amazing indie artists just like they support IPA Sessions. And of course, please follow us on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. That's at IPA Sessions Podcast. And if you or someone you know is an independent artist looking to promote their work or just share their story with us, please hit me up at ipasessionspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, everyone. And I hope you're able to find some inspirations for practical applications in entertainment.